Hello, everybody, and welcome to another one of our lovely events for CMF Terminus 2021. This panel discussion with a handful of really, really talented individuals will hopefully give you a little bit of insight on what life is like after Campus Movie Fest and some of the paths that you can take to get from where you are today to where you want to be. My name is Abe Mohammadione. I'm a member of the CMF team, have been a part of Campus Movie Fest for a very long time, but want to introduce you to our panelists for the day. All four of our guests actually are currently based in the Los Angeles area. So, and I'll let them each tell you a little bit about themselves, but please welcome Matt Lincoln, Anthony Bowie, Daniel Barnes, and Sue Ellen Chitunya.
Hi, everyone.
Hey. Sue Ellen, why don't you give us a start? Just tell us, and we'll go around the horn, just tell us a little bit about your path to where you are today and how you got there.
So I'm going to start it off. Way to put me on the spot, Abe. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, born and raised. My introduction to film was when I was about 7. My uncle snuck me to watch Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and I knew that I wanted to be a part of filmmaking or visual storytelling, but I didn't know how to be part of that because growing up, the arts were not encouraged. I was going to be a lawyer, doctor, and accountant. When I moved to the US, I was on track to be a doctor studying at Georgia State University. And I took a film appreciation class that changed the course of my studies. I immediately switched to film. By the time I graduated, I was 2 classes away from finishing my pre-med prerequisites. And while I was in college, I participated, I want to say either the first or second year of Campus Movie Fest. And I created a short. It was not the best, but it was a great experience because, you know, it was a way for me to just starting exploring this art that I had always been curious about. And by the time I graduated, I had collaborated with a bunch of friends, made a bunch of short films. And then over the years, I've produced over 15 short films that have screened at different festivals around the world. And because of the success of those short films, I was invited to join the Academy last year. And while I was in school, I was interested in editing and producing. Producing was number 1, and then editing was something that I was also interested in. Because of my interest in editing, that led me to a post-production assistant job on Ant-Man that led me to moving to LA with the Ant-Man crew, where I eventually got promoted to become the in-house post coordinator for Marvel Studios. And I worked there for about 5 years. And then when that contract was done, I wanted to focus more on producing. And I have been on that path now where I'm developing some features, working in the branded space, commercial, and currently working for a producer just to learn more about the TV space because TV and film are vastly different as I continue to explore my path to producing and telling good stories.
Thanks, Sue Ellen. Anthony, you want to take it next?
Hey, I'm Anthony, based out of LA like everybody else. Currently, I guess I'd say generally speaking, I like to refer to myself as a director. I freelance direct. But as it so happens, I also produce now, which led to me actually opening my own production company. So I have a production company in LA called Rise and Shine. And we mostly work on commercial or short format video content. And I mean, that's pretty much it. Been directing for the past, 14 years. And started producing probably in the past 6 years, though I did a little bit of everything as I kind of progressed in my journey as a filmmaker. And that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Anthony. Matt, you want to go next?
Yeah, similar path to Anthony. I graduated and started editing and doing VFX, and that quickly led to also being a director, to be able to wear all the hats at once and produce those jobs. So I started a production company out of school worked that for like 13 years in New York, and recently moved to LA right before the pandemic, actually, to try to pivot more into narrative development, and that's going pretty well. But yeah, I mean, like it's still, the bread and butter is freelance. I haven't had a staff or square job since college, so it's been fine.
Awesome. And Daniel.
Yeah. So I did CMF in school all 4 years while I was there. Super fun, really kind of was a big force in me wanting to pursue it as a career more than a hobby, just like the art of telling stories. And I didn't know what that looked like. Like in school, I loved writing. I thought I loved production, and then I PA'd on some stuff, and it wasn't for me. My attention span is terrible. So it's just twiddling around too much. But I was always interested in like kids and family media specifically. And so my senior year of college, I applied for the Television Academy Foundation internship in children's programming. And I got that. And that's what got me from Alabama, where I'm from, to LA. So I moved a week after I graduated college for that internship. And I was placed at Hasbro Studios, where I was an intern for their TV team in development, which was so fun. And that's where I kind of learned that that's what I wanted to do. Like I love being a part of that creative process and working with creatives, but not necessarily having to be the one to come up with the ideas. And so ever since then, I've been on that journey of climbing the ladder in the TV development world in the kids and family space. And so I went from Hasbro to Amazon Studios, and I worked on their kids content for a bit. And then I moved to a studio entertainment company called Moonbug, which really specializes in like preschool, young, like Coco Melon, Blippi, like really, really young kids stuff. And now I'm at Cloudco. I'm a development executive at Cloudco, and working on a lot of stuff like Holly Hobby and Care Bears and a lot of really cool brands for TV. So yeah, that's been my journey.
Awesome. Thanks for those introductions, everyone. And to all of our students out there, feel free to submit a question if you have one through the Q&A function at the bottom of Zoom. Otherwise, we'll keep the conversation going. Sue Ellen, I'll start back with you since you haven't spoken for a second. I think that a lot of students that are graduating from undergrad, participating in CMF, want to know if they should go to grad school. What's your take on that? And we can let the others jump in with their answers as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. There's no right or wrong answer. So take this with a grain of salt. If you study film for undergrad, I don't think you really need to go to grad school unless you went to a school that was like mostly theory heavy and you want to focus more on production, and vice versa. If you went to a school that was like maybe production heavy, but now you're like, oh, I want to explore theory, then do that. But if you studied something completely different, like business or pre-med like myself, and you're like, you decide you want to explore film, I highly recommend going to grad school or some kind of program, because what school does for you is that it builds a community of people that you're coming up with together. That's what you really get out of it. And also, as you continue growing, you realize the value of whatever school you have, because you have this alumni pool to go back to for resources. That's my take on that.
Cool. Anyone else have thoughts on grad school?
I mean, I'd go a step farther even and say that forget grad school, even undergrad is unnecessary for certain people. I think over the course of my career, I've asked where someone went to school during hiring 0 times. So all people really care about is the work that you've done and if you've been referred by somebody else that they trust. That's not to say that school isn't helpful. I mean, I went to USC, supposedly the best film school, and I think I could have gone without ever having attended. In fact, a lot of the people I work with either did not go to a traditional school, film school, or they went somewhere else. So, you know, I'm sure we'll cover it as we go, but just hard work and you know, having a great attitude, that's like number one for me. So I don't care really where you came from. There's certain careers and industries in this world I think you don't need school for, like business or film. So, you know, if you're a doctor, please get a degree. But outside of that, you know, I don't think it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, backing that up, basically, I went to NYU. It was a fine experience. The biggest benefit of it was like making friends in the city early. But all the skills that actually made me money or contacts or helped my career along thereafter, I learned online, just free tutorials. Like, so if you're going into post or most technical things, experience is king. And like from the other end of what Anthony was bringing on, like when I started working like as an editor for other directors, when I asked them where they went to school, their most common answer was some community college. So like really, you don't need the masthead. No one asks.
Cool. I know that a lot of the students also want to know about having to make a move, whether New York or LA, things of that nature. Daniel, let's start with you on this one. Do you have an opinion on that, or thought, and or any guidance to the students that are looking to make a move?
Yeah, for sure. I think on my end, being on like the production company, like studio side of things, it was necessary for me to move to LA, strictly because no one was gonna hire me living in Alabama to work remotely in LA, being an assistant, which was like the starter job on that path. You had to live here, you needed your own transportation, you needed to get around to be able to run errands and things like that. So yeah, I definitely think so. I don't know what that's going to look like post COVID, because I've been at companies. The previous company I was at hired assistants virtually that lived other places, and it worked out really well. I mean, it was different, but we had to adjust. So I'm not sure what that'll look like post COVID, but it was definitely beneficial, especially as some of the other folks have kind of alluded to. Like, networking is really key, and being able to be in the same place with people and connect with people and form those communities are really vital and really important, and will help you out in the future.
Awesome.
Adding to that, there's a big debate, New York versus LA. And I, you know, started in New York out of convenience, and that was, you know, great. And my goal was always to go to LA though, but like the work kept coming in New York, and that kind of pigeonholed me in the commercial space for a long time. Now, what's interesting, if you're planning to be like bi-coastal or like have your feet in both ponds, you kind of have to be in LA, in my experience. Like, New York is a much less corporeal town. If you want to do business in both towns, it's much harder to, you know, take a phone equivalent meeting in LA. I mean, like people are much less likely to deal with you if you're not like on the ground here. And the same is not true of New York, I found. So if you're debating between the two, you kind of, or want both, LA is a bit of a different culture in that way.
Awesome. Any other thoughts? Cool. We have a couple questions coming in through the Q&A. One is, you know, what are y'all's takes on kind of going the freelance or indie film route? What advice would you give to anyone who wants to pursue that kind of path, but simultaneously wants to be fiscally responsible?
Sorry, I missed the very beginning of the question.
Yeah, no. Like, what's the take on going like the freelance or indie film route? Kind of, I'm assuming, and Eugene, you can comment if you're thinking like making your own shorts and things like that, and doing the festival circuit and things of that nature, helping friends out on pictures and things like that.
I have a little bit of a perspective on that. So, I mean, we were joking before we actually got on with everybody that all four of us are still in pursuit of that mountaintop, right? And in fact, I think unless you're just satisfied with, something lesser, then we're all going to always be on that journey trying to get to that next thing. Now, having been in the industry as long as I have, I will say personally, and from a lot of people that I've spoken with, you start with these really big dreams. You want to be the next Spielberg, Cameron, whoever it is. And, pretty swiftly, except for a few people, you realize that's not going to be easy, at least, right? No one thinks you're as special as you think you are. And so a lot of times what I think happens is that the career ends up finding you, to some degree. Like I said, I didn't intend to produce. I just happened to be pretty good at it. And then people wanted me to provide that service for them. So I got into it. And as you mentioned, Abe, it's something that you start to try and do more and more as you get older, because you do have fiscal responsibilities, whether it's a family, whether it's rent, whatever the case may be. You don't want to eat ramen noodles anymore. It's just, you start to look at life a little bit differently as you get older. And that's not to say don't pursue your dreams or continue, because like I said, I think all four of us are still continuing to reach for something higher. But, you find out that you might be good at things that you didn't expect to be good at, and that might become your calling card. And you just continue to push to try to find a way to that other path if you can get to it. But oftentimes, something will reveal itself to you, and that's what you end up doing. I'm sure all four of us can talk to that. So, I don't think there's a right or wrong, but I think a lot of times, it'll kind of show itself to you.
Also, if
Yeah,
you're a
and-
freelance, sorry, go ahead, Shana.
Just to add to what Anthony said, another thing to think about if you want to go the indie route is that if you have a full-time job, wherever you're located, find the group of indie filmmakers in your city or students who are coming up with you, and maybe come up with a story that you can create on the weekends or in your off times while you're still working to pay your bills, and creating something small that's attainable.
Speaking as like from the complete freelance perspective, learn to compartmentalize. The clients you make your bread and butter from are probably going to be different from the clients you work with in a more artistic capacity. Because what you got to realize is, like, in commercial spaces, there's a lot of money, and money doesn't cause bitterness because there's enough of it to go around, and people are generally paid fair rates. In independent film, though, there's always a squeeze. It's always a hustle, and someone's always asking somebody else to make a sacrifice for a bigger dream that isn't necessarily yours. So if you're pursuing independent film and you want that to be your primary career path, you just got to be ready with a pretty thick skin. It often works pretty well to have like one hand in both spaces to make sure you're supported and make sure you keep that financial cushion there, so you can embrace the power of no. Because that's another thing we should probably talk about later, but it is a completely different subject. Like, the power of being able to say no in the freelance world is super important.
Yeah. Cool. Jumping off that a bit to your kind of what you just brought up, Matt, I think that long hours, overworking are seen as kind of like a badge of honor or rite of passage, in at least previously in the film industry. What can young people do or say to help them balance between making a good impression, kind of to what you were talking about earlier, Anthony, just being a hard worker, being a good person, and protecting their physical and mental health through the process? Anyone have thoughts on that?
That's a really hard balance to strike. I mean, honestly, that's part of your career is going to be learning where and when you can say no, and how you develop the power to do so. And to speak very frankly, power comes from the novelty of your skill and the size of your runway. I mean, like, how much cash cushion you can put underneath you is pretty important as a freelancer, just to be able to understand, like, okay, this is the day rate I can defend, and this is what happens if I have to tell this client to to go away for a minute. The other thing there is it's important, if you're going to pursue a freelance career, to diversify your client base, so you're not reliant on any one person. So if you do have a falling out, because it does happen, especially in the indie world, like some bridges will burn, but you don't want to be reliant enough on a single connection to become desperate in negotiation.
And just to add to that, you know, when you're doing the negotiations, I always say, you know, try to have like your 3 W's, your wish, want, and your walk. So like your wish, like what your highest wish rate is, what your want, which is usually the market rate, and what your walking away point is. So that when you go into negotiating, you know that if it's at your walking away point, it's easy for you to say no, because you've prepared for that. And then as far as like balancing the work and the personal, I think it's really important to hone in on yourself, because each person is different, and figuring out like what it is that grounds you personally. So for some people, it's as simple as drinking coffee by themselves in the morning, or taking a walk, or maybe taking a day off on the weekends and just like regrouping and recharging, because that's really important. How you show up for yourself personally can also like show up in your work unintentionally. So just being mindful of that.
I think also something that's really important if we're talking about kind of self-help and self-care. And I wanted to talk about this later, but I guess now is as good a time as any. But normalizing the idea that you can have a career in this film industry without being Steven Spielberg and all these guys, and live a great life. Like, I think everyone has really big eyes, and I don't know if I'm just old, but I'm like, Gen Zers, they're all dreamers. They all want to, you know, do all this and that, which is fair. I would encourage you to dream and pursue those passions. But at the same time, you know, outside of our industry, even, there's no shame. There's nothing wrong with being an accountant, being a nurse, being any of these other jobs. And there's so many of these jobs within the film industry that will afford you a great life, whether that means raising a family, buying a house, taking vacations every year to your liking. There's so many different ways to find success and reach life goals outside of being the biggest director or producer or whatever in your field. So I think if we can normalize that concept of, you know, this is an okay thing for me to do. You're not spending your entire career looking back saying, God, I wish I did this. I'm so much less of this or that. And you'll live a much happier life. So, you know, I think that's really important. And then the other thing is, like, in terms of how much to work or how hard to work for somebody, I think you have to just check in with yourself. That's one of the great things about Gen Z, I think, is how aware they are of their self and emotions and taking care of themselves. So if you go into something and say, I'm going to work for free, I'm going to work 16 hours today, but you end up happy that day, then you're doing it right. You know, I don't care if you're burnt out by the end of the day. There's a difference between being burnt out for somebody else's wishes and doing things you don't want to do, and doing something that you actually care about. You know, you could be doing the exact same thing for two different people, one that you care about and one that you don't. And those are two totally different experiences. So it's really like just navigating that course for yourself and making sure that you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah. Really
The
good.
other thing to look out for is people that, you know, want you to work partially paid in credit, and whether that's worth it. And, you know, sometimes, very rarely, there's an opportunity where it's like, oh yeah, well, I see the concrete benefit in having my name attached to a thing this big in this capacity, and that's fine. But in a situation like, say, you know, oh yeah, it's a big opportunity to be a sound recordist on this picture for free, that becomes, there's a lot of gaslighting producers out there. So especially if you're looking to try to make your first living in the indie space, you're going to see a lot of that. And so never be afraid to say no. And, you know, if somebody promises you a favor down the line, it's usually not going to manifest.
Awesome. Daniel, you mentioned networking earlier. There's a question from one of our participants just on, and just how to, like, what are the methods that you each have used over time to meet new people and connect, and are there any specific platforms or anything like that, or is it just through work?
Yeah, we were joking before the call that this is exactly a question that would come up. And I think the biggest thing I can tell you is have skills and interests that are not film related. Because a lot of the time when you're trying to network in a film space, the people are very jealous with their contacts, and it's very difficult to get anywhere fast. But like my first edit gigs came out of like a swing dancing event where I was like showing somebody how to do something, or like I've retained clients randomly on hikes that I like was like going a couple miles with these people, and they were like, oh, by the way, I own this company. It's like, it sounds ridiculous, but serendipity is like where you make a lot of your more valuable contacts. I mean, like I have a friend who swears by tennis, and another that's just like, oh yeah, like I get my clients surfing. And it's really freaking random, but it's often overlooked. Diversify your interests. It will pay dividends in your career.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think from my side, like LinkedIn is great, like for the studio side, like sure, definitely LinkedIn. I know friends, I've never done this personally, but I have friends who have legit like blind message people on LinkedIn and just ask for a general. And they've all said yes, and that's kind of helped them do that. I've never done that personally, so I can't speak to it, but LinkedIn is great. I know like when I'm searching for specifically like writers, when I'm staffing up rooms and stuff, and of course there's a really big conversation right now around like diversity and having the appropriate voices in the room and things like that. Like I'll get on Twitter and like look, you know, reach out to people on Twitter, or if I'm looking for a cool artist, like going on Instagram and DMing them on Instagram. Like I think there's no set way to do it. I think great. There are a lot of organizations, you know, like there's, you know, out here, there's the Radio and Television Hollywood Society, or I said that acronym wrong. It's something like that. That's really great. And a lot of like Facebook groups are another one where you can like network and meet people. And they post gigs and stuff like that based off of what you want to pursue as a career. But yeah, I think an important part of networking though, which I think Matt spoke to as well, is interest outside of what you're trying to network about. Because if you have a personal connection outside of work, it makes the connection feel more genuine, and you're more likely going to want to work with that person. So,
yeah, the other thing about that that's interesting is that, yeah, the more personal connection also allows you to present yourself in your own context. If you make a connection through work, say you're like editing something for a commercial company and someone else is directing, and like they introduce you to a new client, you're going to be their editor. But if you're aspiring to be a director and you make that connection in a different space, you can introduce yourself differently. Like how you present yourself matters a lot. It's like dress for the job you want, but also call yourself what you intend to be. If you have the skills to back it up and you can present yourself in a new space in that way, people will generally believe you.
Awesome. I know that you're all LA based. There's a question about Atlanta, which is where I am. And so I would take this question and to kind of bend it in two ways. One is, what is your impression of what is going on in Atlanta in terms of the film scene? Are you seeing people come out for gigs or transplants, things of that nature? And then I might answer kind of from the Atlanta perspective, what I'm seeing. Anyone?
I used to live in Atlanta, so I could give a little bit of insight. There are people who are going back to Atlanta for jobs, but it's mostly people who work in production. And people who are interested in the creative are coming to LA. I've seen that trend. So like, you know, people who are interested in producing, directing, they're coming west. And then the production jobs, they're going to Atlanta and then coming back whenever that's done.
Yeah, I've noticed the same. A lot of the people I know in like executive positions have been moving to Atlanta during the pandemic specifically. But most of the people I know that work in Atlanta or live in Atlanta are below the line. So like, you know, if you're a DP, a writer, or a director, and that's what you aspire to be, those jobs, you have to live in New York or LA. they sell there and they will ship you wherever they need you. But like if you're working as like if you want to be like a career gaffer or something, Atlanta is a great place to be. Same with like, you know, stunts and a lot of other really interesting things. Like a lot of Marvel movies are being shot in Atlanta, and they're looking to hire locally for a variety of reasons. So again, if you're selling a show, you want to be in LA, but if you're working on shows, Atlanta's like boomtown.
And just to add to that, so when I started on Ant-Man, like I was in Atlanta, we opened the Pinewood Studios, and I kind of started the trend of people starting to work in Atlanta and moving to LA. So another way you could do it is, you know, if you're working, say in post or production is a little challenging to come to LA, but if you're working in post and you have a good relationship with the team, you can potentially talk to that team about continuing on with them to post, but that usually means that you're going to that city or LA to work as a local, and you have to find a way to fend for yourself. They wouldn't cover those costs for you. But it's also a good way to just, you know, end up in LA.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just, you know, you guys, I think hit the nail on the head that, yeah, a lot of the below the line stuff is really, there's a lot of opportunities right now. And for things like G&E or right stunts or hair and makeup or art department, stuff like that. But yeah, I think directing, writing, development is all that currently doesn't take place in Atlanta. Outside, if you're shooting something, obviously, if you're the director, you're just going to go to where the production is. Great, thanks for those answers. Are there any kind of most true cliches that students should be aware of, or things to note to avoid, if like just like scream red flag for y'all for something you've seen in the industry that's so obviously a sign of not the right path?
Well, I mentioned gaslighters before, and that's definitely going to be a huge issue. If you're asked to work for free, like there is a phantom pressure there. Like a lot of people think, oh man, if I say that I won't work for free, these people will stop talking to me. That's not true. Usually, like if they're like, oh yeah, you work for the experience, right? And it's like, well, no, here are my rates. These are my rates. You'll often just, you know, climb a rung of respect in their eyes instead of, but like, it's also, even if they do end up giving you the money for the job that they wanted you to do for free in the first place, that's probably not someone you want to be working with in the future. So people tell you who they are, believe them the first time.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's really important to listen to your gut, and going back to what we were talking about, just being okay with saying no. Because like, you know, sometimes the misconception is like, you know, if somebody has a name, they're going to be great to work with, you know, and it may not be aligned. I've said no to projects that I've set up to go into production. And, you know, as we get closer, you realize things are not aligned. And we've had conversations where we do part amicably, but it took me just like listening to my gut that this relationship wasn't going to get any better. There was going to be continued gaslighting. And some of these projects have gone on to do well, but again, don't get attached to the potential of what something can do to you for your career, because like there's a name attached to it, or, you know, because at the end of the day, it's not really worth it.
On the other side of that, I guess, in terms of cliche, it's, you know, who you know. I mean, that's like 99.9% true. Basically, you know, you guys touched on it in terms of networking, but try to get to know more people, basically. And also, like, this is more a life philosophy, but like, just be kind to everybody, treat everybody the same and nicely. You never know where that next job is going to come from. I got one of my, you know, national spots that I did because my mom spoke with the woman on an airplane. Turned out to be a producer in LA. We hooked up, and then, you know, I got the job. So you just never know where it's going to come from. Be kind to everybody, and, you know, just work hard. And, you know, I mean, more cliches for you, but yeah.
I was going to say the exact same thing. It's legitimately such a relationship-based business. Ever since after my assistant job, I didn't apply for any other job after that. It's always been referrals or like people trying to poach me from another company or something of that nature. And it's all based off of not even like people who know me, but someone who knows me. They'll just be like, oh, like you should talk to Daniel about this, the set up a call. And that's legitimately how I've gotten from like my first job to my job now. They've all been relationship. Like a friend of a producer emails me, says, oh, this studio's looking for a new exec. Like, would you be interested? I can make an intro, that type of thing. And it's pretty gnarly when you think about how connected people are and how you like Anthony just said, you never know who you're meeting. I know I got recommended for a job from a former intern. So like someone who was like my intern helped me get a job to like help me climb up just off of someone that he knew. And he had a general with him and they said they were looking for a new exec. And so it was like, oh, you should meet my old boss. And then that's how that happened. So you just never know. But definitely, again, like Anthony said, if you treat people kind and with respect and you're a joy to be around, like people are going to want to be around you and they're going to want you on their team.
That's a great point. And one of the craziest things about film, and this should kind of be illegal, but you can get de facto fired for any reason at all. And, you know, since it's all at will based, a lot of the protections that are in place in other industries are not in place here. So it sucks, but people would often rather like hire somebody they liked being around than somebody that was good at the job. So all you be pleasant, always be pleasant. And like, it's an unfortunate block to people with like, you know, less social skills or less like, you know, emotional intelligence. You can often hit walls when working in film. So that's something to be aware of, that if you have to start masking in order to, you know, continue to get hired, either, you know, suck it up and learn or, you know, evaluate like, is this the business for me? Because like film will not protect you. That's something I'm sure everyone's nodding along there. The other big one is beware of pigeonholing. Like I said briefly before that like acquiring unique or specific skills is a good idea. Like, you know, one of the reasons I, you know, didn't PA or anything when I got out of school is because I was good with motion graphics and editing together, which at the time was not a common synergy. But the same clients that started hiring me to do that, they were like, oh yeah, you know, you can edit for us for a minute and we'll, you know, after a few jobs, elevate you or whatever. But like, if you're very, very good at something like editing or VFX, no one is interested in you advancing to the director's chair if that's where you want to be. Because like there are a lot of aspiring directors out there that will happily do that job, but there are way fewer of you that can enable them. So if your aspirations are higher, do not be afraid to advocate for yourself. And if you're not moving in a certain direction with a client or a company, don't be afraid to say, look, this is not for me anymore because I need to be here and this is where you want to keep me. So that's another, that's a harder one to watch for, but watch for it.
No, those are really great insights. And kind of diving in a little deeper to some of the specifics, we've talked a few times about rates. And someone, one of our participants is asking, how do you figure out your rate? Like how do you come up with that number?
Just go as high as you can until they say no. That's.
I mean, that's a fun joke, but kidding aside, some people will not reply to you. Some people will just lose your freaking contact information if you say a number that's a little too high or you're being unreasonable.
I think you can also check Glassdoor. They kind of publish like the median rates. If I'm not, I think that's the website.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know, are you referencing more like industry?
Yeah, I guess.
There's like office. Go ahead, Dave.
No. Yeah, and I don't know exactly where it's coming from. I think that there's like salaried like rates, right, for positions like that, but then there's also day rates, and I think that or gig based rates. So I think that's maybe something, if someone wants to talk about the distinction between both of those for the group, that would be good.
Right. Freelance rates, definitely look at union rate cards as a reference, because that's a good reference, but they're often also kind of on the low side because, you know, that unions are like, okay, well, yeah, this is the minimum you should be paid for this thing. And they're generally right. When you're just starting out in the world, you'll be like, wow, that's a lot of money. That's high, you know, and that's when you're like renting 1 bedroom and a 4-bedroom. And that's like at the time, yeah, but like look out for yourself. If you know, just make sure that, you know, you're not working for day rates that wouldn't add up to a decent salary. Because the other thing about freelance, you got to keep in mind is you're not working all the time. So the same math doesn't apply to you. Part of your job is chasing work. So, you know, you're going to be working, you know, a total probably of 6 months out of the year. And a lot of the rest of that is a hustle. So it's you got to keep that in mind. Sometimes you'll have a great month and sometimes you won't. So it's feast or famine, and your rates should account for that. That being said, a lot of people will also try to offer you bulk days for a decreased rate. That's math you kind of got to do yourself, to each their own preference. But, you know, if it's more valuable to you to have a little downtime than to work more days for a lower rate, insist on the higher rate and you'll work a little less maybe, but you'll have more time for research and development, which is very clutch.
Yeah, speaking on the gig side of things, I think I just echo what Matt says, essentially. It took me a long time to figure out, you know, what I could charge, but also as you move forward and you have more experience, you know, people are more willing to pay you, you know, because you're bringing that experience to the table. Because in film, everyone's just trying to cover their own ass. They just don't want to be the guy to let the production down, the producers down, whoever it is, and they'll pay for that kind of guarantee that they did it the right way, which is actually a reason why you get pigeonholed as well. It's like, we need to find a guy who can do a car commercial, so we have to find a car commercial director. And so that's it. If you don't have a car, you can't do it, which is a little bit absurd to me, because I mean, you're not even directing actors, you're just framing a scene essentially. So, go ahead.
I was just going to do you know the elephant story?
No, go ahead.
Oh man. So like just building on the car commercial thing. There's an adage in the director world that's like, okay, well, yeah, we love this guy. Can he direct animals? And they show him the reel. He like has a bunch of animals on the reel, and it's like, okay, but yeah, there are no elephants on that reel, so we're not going to use him. It can get hyper focused in that manner. Sorry, it's a quick tangent. Please continue. Apologize.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, it's just you'll figure it out, and much like how much you're willing to work for somebody, even for free, you kind of just figure it out for the people that you want to work with. Sometimes there's a project you might be more passionate about, and you're willing to do it for less. But as long as you check in with yourself and make sure that you actually are happy doing it, then, you know, I mean, I still can do a job for free if it comes up and I really believe in it. I'll do it. You know, obviously we're always trying to get something out of it, whether it's even for your reel, right? You know, I have like an interesting path as far as when I first started doing commercials, I was doing a lot of comedy. And as I've progressed in my career, I kind of took a break at some point, forced break because I had a kid. And I decided to kind of reroute my reel towards sports and lifestyle, which I wanted to do. And that almost like hit the reset button completely. So the agencies that I was working with before, they didn't see me like that, to Matt's earlier point. And so I'm almost starting all over when I did that. And that's just how it goes, you know, like people, I'm sure Suellen can speak to in the narrative world, short films, you do one dramatic film, you can't do a comedy now. Like they want you to do that drama. So I feel like I'm off on a tangent now, but you know, you'll figure out what rates work for you, I think, as you go.
And your comment on starting over was interesting, because like parallel moves in film are very, very hard and a little bit tricky to navigate. So like if you want to shift to another department, you have to find somebody to help advocate for your foothold in your current career path, so you can actually make that lateral move instead of having to prove yourself again from square one. That can get tricky. So, you know, pivoting is difficult, and you need help usually.
Sorry, Abe, I see this, one of the questions here, it just pertains to what we were talking about, which I wanted to get to,
Yeah.
which was on the rates. Yeah, like sometimes it might seem like you're getting paid a lot of money, which we can get paid pretty well in the film industry. But like Matt said, you're not going to work every day. And so if you're not in a salaried position, which I can't speak to for, Sue Ellen and Daniel maybe, you got to take into account the fact that, like, for instance, if I'm directing, I get paid on a shoot day. It might sound exorbitant. It could be 10,000 a day or something like that. But you're not accounting for the week and a half prior and anything afterwards if I'm in a grading session, if I'm doing anything else. And then to your question about taxes, when you work freelance, you're responsible for that. You're not having taxes taken out. So, you get hit pretty hard if you don't take it into account. And, the worst thing is that you end up at the end of the year and you owe, $15,000 in taxes and you have nothing because you already spent it. So it's always, now what I do is I check in quarterly on, how much I've been making, set that aside. You can either pay your quarterly taxes early or at least set it aside, which is an art unto itself and very annoying, but, it's something I'm sure Matt can talk about as well.
Yeah. So taxes are fun. In some states, you're actually required to pay quarterly if you're a freelancer in certain circumstances. I cannot recommend highly enough getting an accountant. Like it's TurboTax is fine, and in some cases your taxes are going to be simple enough, but it is definitely worth it to have somebody advocating for you, and it's not actually that expensive. So do that. Also, if you're doing a lot of post-production, a lot of director stuff, there is a very big difference between being a sole proprietor or LLC and being electing to be taxed as an S corporation. And if you're making above a certain amount, the threshold is like in the 70 area. Being an S corp will insulate you from some things, and it will also it'll save you a little money on taxes. That's whatever, but like the more important thing is it'll affect who you can work with and who can hire you. So how you choose to be taxed is a very important decision. Definitely consult the financial advisor on this. But again, if you're an S corp these days, like there are, like, for example, I should not name specific companies, but if you're working with certain companies above a certain size, they will not hire you to execute a job on contract unless you are an S corporation or have a certain number of employees. So like, again, like how you appear on paper does matter, and it will affect who you can hire and who can hire you.
Appreciate that, y'all. We got kind of a throwback, the last question that we have currently in the Q&A. When you were in your college era and just after, and obviously that's a different point in time for kind of everyone here to a certain extent, but in the general, I think there's like a decade of overlap here. What were you cutting on when you were making your stuff at that point? What were you shooting on? Things of that nature. Or if you have any recommendations for this generation as they're getting their hands on gear and stuff like that.
I was cutting on Final Cut, but it was the last one that got discontinued until the new one. For now, I highly recommend getting familiar with Avid and Premiere. If you want to be an editor, I would say if you can learn both, I recommend that, because depending which direction you want to go in, and also if you're freelancing, some projects prefer to be Avid based, some prefer to be Premiere. So the more versatile you are, the better.
And in the commercial world, it often tends toward Premiere, and the inverse is true usually for narrative, I've found. Is that consistent with your experience, Sue Ellen?
Yeah, most narratives are Avid, but I've also been on some that are Premiere.
I've heard of the odd narrative being cut on Final Cut X as well, which dismays me because I've been kind of a Final Cut hater for a while. The other great thing about Premiere, though, is like native integration with other Adobe products, which like it sounds weird and like monopoly-ish and whatever, but like native compatibility with After Effects and other formats is huge. Don't learn Apple Motion. Just go for After Effects. Like, and there's a ton of free knowledge out there to support it. You know, if you're going into motion graphics, learn After Effects first. If you've hit a wall there, maybe you learn Nuke, but node-based compositing is much less commonly demanded. and After Effects can be in most of your first jobs. So that's huge. In terms of camera, that's constantly changing. And like your edit platform, what you choose to buy it greatly depends on what your goals are. So if you want to be like a high-end DP that's like available for features and rents out his gear or whatever, like go Auraflex or Red if you can afford the obvious price tags. But Blackmagic is becoming an increasingly viable option and is one of the smoothest shoot to edit things for the price and dynamic range you'll get out of it on the market now. Ursa 12K, it's probably my next buy. Anyone else want to talk about cameras?
I would say don't buy anything. That's my personal recommendation. If you get on the jobs that are big enough, they're going to give you the money to rent those things. And you don't have to worry about insurance and all that stuff. If you're a DP and it comes as part of your whole, spiel, then that works. But I know plenty of DPs who don't own any gear at all. It changes so quickly that, year on year, it's like you're losing money. It's like buying a new iPhone every year, which some people do, but you're losing kind of money every year. It's really, actually, my answer is whatever works for you. If you can afford it, like today, technology is so damn good. You can shoot on your iPhone, and as long as the story's there, you're good to go. And you have the right people around you. Of course, any DP is going to tell you the lighting is more important than the camera. So concentrate on the craft, I think, more than the tech, because all the tech is pretty good. You go to your lowest baseline of iPhone and you're still shooting 4K. I mean, from when I was shooting, it was like 720, or actually, we were the last class at USC to shoot on film. So that's how old I am.
Lighting, yes. Also lenses. Like that's the other constant that doesn't really change. And I completely agree with Anthony. Like a lot of the time, once you make it there, you're not going to be shooting on your own camera for bigger jobs. What's nice about having your own camera is practical hands-on experience, because other than where the buttons are located, theory doesn't change. So, I've had my FS700 with a 4K recorder on it for, 8 years now, 10 maybe, I don't know. But basically, as long as the camera's been out, I've had that camera, and I'm only now considering turning over. So your camera purchases, if you choose to make them, are going to be pretty rare. So I mean, part of what should drive your decision is what glass you want to have, because that will probably not change between cameras.
And just to add to that, this is more producer based. I would say, get familiar with budgeting softwares, the different budgeting softwares that are out there, Movie Magic, Showbiz. I think Gorilla is free, but just get familiar with how to break down a budget and how to do a schedule.
And if you're a writer, buy Final Draft. Celtics, there's a free version of it. It's fine. You can pay a little bit to have the watermarks taken off. But if you're trying to break into writing, you're not going to be taken seriously unless you are on Final Draft and can share Final Draft files. It's weird, sad, but it's true.
And a lot of these programs, because you're still in school, you get discounts. So see what student discounts you get, and you get a hefty discount too. Whenever I'm buying software, I'm just like, man, I wish I was a student.
And the greatest thing about this, I love this, that's a great point. Once you buy a student discount, the upgrades are normal price going forward. So you'll be upgraded to usually you'll be upgraded to full versions of the software. Well, I mean, you get the full version of the software. What I'm saying is you buy Final Draft as a student price. Once you're out of school, you pay the normal upgrade fee to continue getting the more current version. So buy in now, it's a very good investment.
Well, one last question that just came in, and Daniel, maybe you want to start with this. The question starts, have you written any feature scripts? I think the more important part is, if you have written something, they're asking, how do you get it seen? So do you want to break the reality of that process down just for them? I think that there's that myth, right? You write something and you send it out, but what is that process actually?
Right. Yeah, everyone has a script. And Yeah, getting it seen is kind of like, okay, what are you trying to get hired as a writer? Are you trying to like get this made? Like, what is your end goal for getting this seen? I think you're not going to be able to like mail your script to an agent and get representation. Like, you're not going to be able to mail your script to Warner Brothers and then they're like, this is a hit, we're going to make it tomorrow. Like, it just doesn't work like that. And there's a lot of legality around unsolicited submissions that like they won't even like open it. Like, when I was an assistant, that was like my thing, was we would get scripts sent to us all the time and I would have to immediately go and shred them, like, because we're not allowed to read them. I think the easiest, or the ways I've seen scripts getting read have been through like different types of like script competitions that you can Google. Another thing is if you have a mentor that works in the industry, getting them to read your script so then they can maybe advocate. If you are trying to get it made or trying to get it seen, they could then advocate for you and reach out to one of their friends to be like, hey, I have this young promising writer that I'm mentoring, like, would you read their stuff? I've definitely done that for some of my friends. And I've actually hired a writer through that. But as far as like getting it made or getting it seen by like big wigs, it's very difficult.
The other thing about this is as important as your script is your pitch and your treatment, possibly more important. Because like a lot of the time in TV, when a sale occurs, the script's not even written yet. Or when representation manifests, the script's not written yet. So, you know, and the other thing about this is like we were talking about with networking before, the people that will want to read your script, you will meet them at the most random times. Like I have a project in development right now with a rather large company. And the reason I know these people is because I failed to sell someone tangentially related to them on a commercial project. Like, it was the worst lunch ever. Like, we sat down, we ordered the food, we pitched them on this thing. They said no before the food came. It was awful. And then like they were like, what else are you up to? And I'm trying to like, I've got this short film that I did this thing with and like whatever. And he's like, oh my God, my partner has, you know, a friend who is very interested in this specific social issue. I should hook you up with this person. And then that ended up being a whale. Like, so it's you got to have the elevator pitch ready to go at every possible moment, because you never know when it's going to happen. So like on that project, it's pretty far along now. But when that pitch happened, it existed as a short film that I hadn't even produced yet, and now it's like a TV pilot that might become a series. So like it's the no one will read your script, but people will listen to you talk about it.
Awesome. So we are at time. I think if we can just go around, and if you have any final thought for the students at home as we send them on their way for the rest of Terminus, we'll start with Anthony. How about that?
Well, firstly, you know, if you're here, good job, because, you know, as anybody here will say, you have to take every opportunity. I know there was a question, Abe, I think, about luck and how much luck factors into your career. Yeah. A lot, but I do believe that you make your own luck. So, you know, for instance, my mom met that woman on the airplane flight, right? But it was up to me to follow through. It was the work that I had done previously that she, you know, was attracted to, that gave her the, you know, the belief that I could get the job and do the job correctly for her. So yeah, it took a lot of luck, but it also was bolstered by experience and hard work and all the other stuff. So first step, you know, if you're here, good job. But yeah, I'm just going to go back to what I said previously, which is not everybody who's here is going to make it, at least in the way that they intend to make it in their brains right now. And that's just fine. You can live a really great life with a career in this industry, doing something you didn't really expect to do. And you can find happiness in a lot of different ways. And, you know, to echo something they said before, is like diversify your interest. I'm here, we have a different business. I'm in our warehouse for a dog clothing business we have. you know, me and my wife. So, you know, it just doesn't end. You know, don't feel like you know, you're too late in the game. There's plenty of memes out there that'll tell you that Ang Lee didn't start until he was 43, Morgan Freeman didn't start until he was 50, whatever the case may be. So, you know, if you really do want to do it, you know, be more worried about finding happiness than you are about attaining that job position or title. And that's it.
Thanks, Anthony. Matt?
Yeah, I guess I'd say, like Anthony said, take care of yourself, take care of your happiness, but also stay curious, never stop learning. You know, it'll help you along in your career, but also other people notice that energy and will definitely be attracted to it.
Thanks. Daniel?
I would just echo again what Anthony said earlier in terms of just like being kind and being pleasant to be around, because you never know where it will take you. And especially in all types of jobs, especially when you're working with people long hours, a lot of drama can erupt, just avoid it. Don't get caught up in it and just do your job well and be positive, and it'll really take you a long way.
Thanks. And Sue Ellen?
I would say, you know, invest in yourself as much as you can. You're here today. Congratulations. You're doing a great job. You're already investing in yourself. Keep that up. And above anything, I just encourage you to be empathetic, compassion, forgiving, and kind, not towards other people, but also not just towards other people, but also towards yourself. And, you know, that would take you a long way. Just, you know, having those guiding principles.
Awesome. I want to thank you all on behalf of the entire CMF crew and family and all the participants this past year. It's been a weird one for them, for certain, but really appreciate you all making the time today, Matt, Anthony, Sue Ellen, and Daniel. So thank you all. Thanks to all of the students that are watching this now, and we'll see it later. And we have a screening tonight later on for CMF Terminus, so you can check that out. And then we have the Golden Tripod Awards tomorrow evening. So stay tuned to see who won. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.